Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm here with Samantha, and we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. I have had so much people messaging me saying, I really need to watch this. I really need to learn that. I suffer from it all the time. I do. You know, Samantha, it is just so great to see you and to talk to you about this. As people who watch this regularly know that I always ask you my guest the first question, which where can people find you? Because I want you to get your pitch in first, so you can if people go, Samantha looks like she knows what she's talking about, I'm going to make contact with her.
Well, mostly I am active on Twitter, and so my Twitter handle is my name at Samantha Demers. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure it's Samantha-Demers, but if you look me up, you'll see my picture. And there's not too many Samantha Demerses in the world, but there's
they're probably, if they don't find you, I don't think they're searching hard enough. And Matt says hi as well.
Oh, hi, Matt.
Just to get into the conversation, you worked in let me get this right. You worked in a number of do you call it public sector or something in Canada, and then you went out by yourself. But talk us through your journey in terms of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I worked for the House of Commons of Canada for 12 years. I got in pretty young. I think I was 22 or 23 and got a permanent job. And so I felt like I was set for life and that I would be there till I retired because I could retire young and had great benefits, good maternity leaves, all that sort of stuff. And mostly my career, I was doing different admin jobs. So I would go in different parts of the House of Commons doing admin. But near the end, I got my dream job, which was to be the event coordinator for the House of Commons on the employee side. So I would coordinate all the events for the employees, their long service awards. I was in charge of the United Way campaign and did some other big events. So I loved my job, but also, even though it was my dream job, my dream had changed and it was no longer my dream to work in the public sector forever. I would see people online that, wrote books or became public speakers or were coaches or just living this fabulous life. And I thought, oh, that's so exciting. I'd love to do that, but I can't. I'm stuck here. I have, what they call the golden handcuffs, that this perfect job and guaranteed pension and everything. So I was overworked near the end. I got burnt out. And during my burnout, it really helped me to see that not only did I get burnt out because I had a little bit too much work on my plate, but also because my dream had changed and I needed to be honest with myself about what I really wanted and give myself permission to do what I wanted. So after a few months of being off, deciding to quit, I left. I sent in my resignation letter, which was really hard. And then for 4 years, didn't do any of the fun things. I did do freelancing work. I went back part-time, worked for a different department. I learned how to do some marketing and copywriting. I started working with my husband in our online business, which I really enjoyed. But all the other stuff I didn't do for 4 years. I didn't write anything. I sort of dabbled. I would write these blog posts, but just keep in my notes. I would have outlines for books or ideas for podcasts or YouTube channels, but then never do anything mostly because I had imposter syndrome, but also because my niche wasn't super clear. And I thought, oh, if my niche is super clear, then I won't have imposter syndrome and then it'll be easy and I'll know what I'm doing. But after 4 years and during the pandemic and being stuck at home, I just looked around and realized I was 38 years old. I'm an older millennial. My daughters were becoming teenagers and thought, if I don't do something now, I'm never going to do it because obviously my imposter syndrome is not going away. And obviously my niche isn't becoming clear. So let me just try doing stuff, which is how I kind of ended up on Twitter. I didn't want to be on Instagram where all my friends and family were, but I wanted to start creating something. And so I went on Twitter, started creating some content, sharing in Twitter Spaces, which is kind of like Clubhouse where it's a live audio, and slowly have gotten over my imposter syndrome, but also have seen it come up time and time again. And that's sort of how this has become what I talk about, because I feel like there's so many people like me that, especially if they're a little bit older, that we just feel stuck and we have this imposter syndrome to just do something new.
So what is it that was it inspired you to do something? Because there's a famous saying, which is activity comes before inspiration. Because quite often people are sort of saying, well, what will happen is that something will appear and all of a sudden I'll be told what to do. But actually, it's about the activity before the inspiration. I mean, what was it for you?
So I felt the same way, that I thought that I would have the inspiration. I'd know exactly what to talk about and who my audience was and what I should share and how I should share it. But like you said, it's the activity before the inspiration. And I needed to just share a lot of things. And the other day I was sharing this. I had a list of all these different topics. I talked about quitting my job. I talked about marketing. I talked about relationships. I talked about being a parent. I explored all kinds of topics until I started to find things that I really felt inspired to share. And something that I've noticed with, at least with online content creators, is that the niche that you think you're going to have is often not even the niche that you end up with. And even people that start out with something really clear, they're talking about leadership, they end up not really doing that in the end. They end up talking about relationships or something because there's things in my life that I love and I could talk about for hours with people, but I don't love sharing content about it online. And I couldn't figure that out until I started to take action and do things. And that's when it started to become clear, what do I actually like talking about?
And what did you start doing? Was it a case of saying, right, I'm going to do something and I'm going to do so, because some people could sit there and say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a 2,000 word white paper and put that out online. I mean, what is it that you did that enabled you to take action?
So I was kind of like those people and like to just think through and make a big plan. So at first I thought I was going to do a YouTube channel, but then I was too scared to be on video and have to do makeup all the time. So I thought, okay, well, I won't do that. I'll do writing. And so then I found Medium. I said, okay, maybe I could write articles and share ideas. So I went on Medium. I created an account. I paid to have a membership and was reading other people's stuff, but still not taking any action, still just trying to figure out how do I write the best way. So then I noticed a lot of the writers were on Twitter. And so I started to spend a bit more time on Twitter and thought, well, I guess this is where writers hang out and I have no friends and family here. So I can hang out here and hide in the shadows. So as I was on Twitter for a little bit, I came across this program called Ship 30 for 30, which is by Dickie Bush and Nicholas Cole. It's a 30-day challenge to write short essays. So they're about 200 to 300 word essays that you write and you put out as an essay, but you have to do them every single day for 30 days. Yep. And I'm telling you, Tim, this is what changed my life. And not only just putting out these essays, but it's this idea of doing something that's hard, that makes you uncomfortable, but isn't impossible. But you have to do it every single day and you have an end date. And so having that end date has helped me with so many other things. Even when I started doing Twitter Spaces, I would say to a friend, well, let's do it for 3 weeks and see how it goes. And then when I drafted a book, which is a book about imposter syndrome, it was just a 30-day experiment to just share things for 30 days. And so I've done this several times now in my content creation journey, which is to do something that's uncomfortable, do it for a consistent amount of time, but have an end date so that at the end you could decide, is it uncomfortable because it's new? Or is it uncomfortable because you really don't like it and you don't want to do it? But I needed that kind of a challenge in order to really push me to put things out there, because my imposter syndrome manifested as perfectionism, as over editing, as questioning myself and my abilities. I thought everything I shared was stupid and that nobody would like it. And even if I just wrote it and I thought, oh, this is so good, when I would go back and reread it 5 minutes later, I think this is ridiculous. I really shouldn't share this. And that was my pattern for my whole life.
And I think that's true in so many of us, which is that what we expect is for everyone to come in and actually criticize. And that's not actually the way that social works, because everybody is in a similar position to ourselves. And the fact that you've put something out usually is like, wow, at least you've done it. Because I've been sitting there with these blogs and doing nothing about them for weeks. But I've seen people, spend 30 minutes working out what image they're going to put on it. And it's like, you don't need to do that because no one's going to care.
Yeah, exactly.
So you talk about when we talked beforehand, you talked about you started off by doing experiments.
Yeah.
So talk us through that as well.
So that's really, I think even when I did Ship 30 for 30, I didn't think of it as an experiment per se, but as I did things after that, realizing that doing something with somebody else, so having some kind of accountability, kind of like a gym buddy, but with content creation, having a set amount of time to do it. So you have to do it more than once, and having an end date is what really helped me, but also the mental framework of thinking of it as an experiment. And so I'm sure that mostly why I didn't start a YouTube channel was because I thought I'm going to have to do this forever. And I'm sure that I didn't start a podcast because I thought I'm going to have to do this forever. And if I do a newsletter, I'm going to have to do this forever, because you're supposed to be consistent and that's how you grow things. And I'm a marketer. And so I know that it's true. But I know that also as a human, we evolve and we change. And since I hadn't created anything and I didn't really have a niche, there was not really a point to start a podcast or YouTube channel that's just kind of about everything. And so for me, it worked really well to be on Twitter, where you could just put out ideas and they kind of disappear after a day or two anyway. And to think of everything as an experiment, that took a lot of my own pressure off my perfectionism and my inner critic, because it's an experiment, so I could fail. It's an experiment, yes, so I might not love it. It's an yes, experiment, so if it's awful, it's okay. It was just an experiment.
And I do love the point that you make about having the end date, which is, you know, I've done we do a podcast on Fridays where the team actually gets together, and when we set it up, I said we're going to do it for 3 months, and at 3 months we're going to decide what this is about beforehand. We're going to run it for 3 months, and then we're going to decide what we're going to do afterwards. You know, when we did Clubhouse last year, we decided beforehand why we were going on to Clubhouse. We did it for 3 months, and we realized we're not achieving what we wanted to get, so we stopped doing it. And that was the other thing, which is to have the ability to say, I'm not doing this because this isn't doing what I want it to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is something that I've seen with myself, and when I've given other new creators advice to just try something out and have that end date takes so much pressure off. Because also when you're doing something like this with someone, it also helps that sometimes you don't even know how a partnership's going to work out. And this is so true, like in life and in business. And it's so hard to find a really good partner. But even if it's just a podcast co-host or someone you're experimenting with doing Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse, it's really helpful to have that person. But sometimes the dynamic might not be the way that you want it to be. But you have that person, so you have to show up together and you have a commitment. And so you can push through your fears together. But then at the end, say, my life has changed, my time has changed, and get out of it after if it doesn't work so well for you.
So what about the fear of judgment? How do you get over that?
That is really hard, because one thing that I realized after I quit my job, or at least when I was on my burnout phase and trying to work through why I was burnt out, my boss was micromanaging and very difficult to work with. But I realized through having a really good coach after that, the reason why it hurt me so much, the micromanaging, was that I micromanage myself so much. And I've seen that happen again also with the content that I put out, is that it's not even so much about other people judging me. I judge myself so much. So the one time that I put out a tweet, probably 7 or 8 months into my Twitter journey, having like about 6,000 followers at that point, somebody noticed that I had a typo. And Tim, I'm the kind of person that doesn't have a typo.
The typo, yeah.
Yes, I did not put a apostrophe S on someone's. I wrote someone instead of someone's.
Yep.
And it hurt me so much. It was like a knife in my heart of like, how did I do this? How did I make this mistake? To be fair, when I was typing it up, it was very small print and I didn't really notice. But it made me realize that comment was it wasn't even a mean comment. It was just pointing it out, but I judged myself so much. And so even after 7 months of creating content, of leading spaces, of drafting a book and doing all kinds of things, being invited on podcasts to speak, that one comment really brought me down. And getting over the fear of judgment is really not easy, because most of the time we're judging ourselves more harshly than anyone else. And so for me, what's helped is just telling myself that anything is an experiment, and so that I don't feel like I have to do it perfectly. And I don't have to, if somebody says, oh, you made a mistake, like, that, it was just an experiment. So it's okay.
Matt says he blames productive texting.
Yeah.
Very funny, Matt. Thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, the grammar police are difficult. And I know that, you know, quite often people say, you know, they're meaning well when you miss the apostrophe S and you go, but the thing is with tweets, you can't edit. You either delete it or you leave it as it is. And my view always on this is it's a laugh, which is, okay, I missed it, you know, and I always reply with a, you know, smiley face with the tears coming out their eyes, because it's like, yeah, I made a mistake. And we all do that. I had someone writing to me saying that they found reading my materials difficult because there were so many typos in them. And I wrote back and said, obviously the materials aren't for you.
Well, that's it too, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because, you know, there will always, you know, with my stuff, there will always be typos. So, you know, you just get used to it. We did have one guy that basically, I did have a guy that constantly replied to me saying this is where the typo is, which is really great, because I kind of felt that I was outsourcing the correction of work. But I mean, I think that there's too many people out there that are willing to judge. And it was Gary Vee that said there's two types of people in this world: people that build things up and people that knock things down. And you have to decide which one of those you are. And I think I was really interested in your answer, because it's the $56 million question when it comes to doing stuff and imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And also the other thing is that quote, and I forget the person, it's a famous person that said it, but it's about being the man in the arena, and you know, being the one that you're either in the arena, taking the chance, doing the thing, or you're staying on the outside. And I also spoke to a friend who's an executive coach and a psychologist, and he was talking to me about that, and how when you're willing to do these things that are hard and uncomfortable, you're willing to go in the arena. And yes, you're going to make mistakes, but the people that judge, they are not the other people that are in the arena. They're the people that are sitting on the sidelines and are looking at somebody who's a little bit further ahead or taking a chance. And they're the only ones that are pointing out mistakes. Other people that are creating content, or even especially if they have bigger followings or they're already authors or established YouTube creators, they are not going to smaller content creators and pointing out their flaws. It's never that. It's always people that aren't willing to take the risk themselves. And so because of probably their own judgment of themselves, they see errors in others and feel like it's helpful to point these things out, but it also makes them feel better about themselves. Like, well, I wouldn't make that mistake, but really they're not even taking the chance to do it. And so that really helped me as well, to think of that I'm actually creating something and sharing ideas with the world.
Yeah. And that, you know, just think about when you create a blog, or whenever you're creating a video, you're creating something, and it's going to be there forever. And yes, that takes a bravery and courage to do that. But also, as you say, there's people out there that are not willing to do that, and they can sit and throw stones. But you're the one, as you say, you're the one in the arena. You're the one creating the stuff.
Yeah.
And you should be proud of that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. None of us are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just putting up. I'm doing 3 things at once. I'm talking to you, and I'm thinking of questions, and I'm putting up the comments. So thank you to Andrew and Matt for those. Anyway, so talk about you. So you talk about your journey. I'm interested in your journey in terms of, you know, you went onto Twitter. This is a person that's you're like, I had no experience at Twitter. You went onto Twitter. You're doing Twitter Spaces. You've been practicing public speaking. You've been moderating. You've been co-hosting. This isn't a person that's surely suffering from imposter syndrome. This is a person who knows their stuff and is really confident.
I keep doing things that I think mean that I'm over my imposter syndrome. So I did those 30 essays in March of 2021, and thought, well, now I'm not an imposter because I did these essays. So I switched from the essays to writing threads, but I wanted to speak. And so I did Twitter Spaces to practice speaking so that one day I could have a podcast. But I thought, well, Spaces will disappear, so I can practice. And I had imposter syndrome speaking and thinking, do I know what to say? And I felt uncomfortable leading the Twitter Spaces for about 20 or 30 that I did, I felt nervous every time I would go and sit, and I'd have to have my notes and my water and just calm myself down. And then it was around, maybe I had done 50 or 60 where I started to feel like, okay, I think I understand how to do this. I'm feeling a little bit more confident. But it was only around 70 or 80 that I had hosted or co-hosted that I felt like, oh yeah, I could host a space, no problem. And then I was on Twitter hosting these spaces, doing threads from time to time because it's a bigger idea and you could share more things. But I was not sending out individual tweets, Tim. I felt like all my tweets were stupid, and so I should not tweet. And in August, this is about 5 months later, I saw there was a Tweet 100 challenge. So it's another challenge a bunch of my friends were doing. It was 100 days, so it had that end date. And so I decided to commit to writing a tweet and having to put in my thoughts in one idea rather than a whole bunch of lines where I could share my idea more fully. So I practiced this tweet and it felt uncomfortable and I felt like an imposter until about day 50 or 60 when I realized, oh, I think I know how to write a tweet. And that's almost 2 months of writing one tweet a day until I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing. And by this point, I had about 3,000 followers. So I was doing pretty well. And I started a small group of creators that I was leading on Discord and started to tweet more often until I got to January or February when I decided it's probably time for me to do a newsletter. I had about 7,000 followers. And even though I had this creator group on Discord with almost 200 creators, I've been hosting spaces and people know me for it and they always show up and I have all these followers and I tweet all the time and I get comments. I felt like such an imposter writing a newsletter. And I was just going to send out an email once a week to people. And I felt like an imposter just even telling people that I have an email. And so I sent out a tweet saying, hey, I don't even know if this is good. I don't know if anyone's going to read it, but I really hope that maybe some people will. And I'm just sharing this because I want to tell you that I feel really uncomfortable. And I've now been doing the newsletter for about 2 months and I have over 400 people that are subscribed. And so every day I get 1 or 2 more subscribers and people email me back saying that what I'm sharing is really helpful. But this imposter syndrome doesn't go away. It feels uncomfortable anytime I'm doing something new. And I thought that just writing a newsletter was going to be easy. And so my lesson has been learned that I'm going to keep feeling this way anytime I do something that's a little bit bigger and a little bit scarier than what I've done before, even though writing an email shouldn't be that scary. It felt so scary to me. And also, as I've gone through all of these different experiments, I've realized it usually takes about 50 or 60 times of doing something before you start to feel kind of comfortable. And I wish it was faster, Tim. And I wish it was easier. I wish I could just give you a magic phrase that you could say where imposter syndrome is going to go away and you're going to feel so confident. But it doesn't really fully go away. You just sort of get better. And hopefully you remember to think about the things you have accomplished and the people that have written you nice notes. Thank you for the things that you're contributing to the world.
So Matt asks the question, I think you probably have answered it, which is, would you say you can cure it or do you learn to live with it? And I think you're saying that you need to learn to live with it.
Yeah, and it's kind of a balance where it's way less for a lot of things. But then sometimes, like, for example, I was asked to be a guest in a Twitter space to talk about hosting Twitter spaces because I've done over 100. And I thought that I would have nothing to say. I thought that I would just say, no, you just show up and you talk. And I would have 2 lines to say and it would be over. And that space went for about 2 hours. There was about 800 people that listened. People were coming up and asking questions. And obviously I could talk on and on about it. And yet, even with me having done so many spaces and knowing how to host, writing people messages about my, 6 steps or so that you can do to help you out, I still felt like an imposter with something like that. But then other days, I feel completely fine. And so I think that to answer Matt's question is that it's not fully cured, but you can get better. And sometimes it'll just come up out of nowhere.
Samantha, it's been fantastic talking to you. And I appreciate Matt and Andrew and their comments as well and the questions. Samantha, remind people where they can get hold of you.
So you can find me on Twitter at Samantha Demers. I also have a LinkedIn account. I'm pretty sure it's Samantha-Demers. And on Instagram, it's also at Samantha Demers. And I am writing a book, which is The Creator's Guide to Overcoming Imposter Syndrome. And I'm about to start a podcast with my friend. We're also doing this as an experiment. We're doing 30 interviews with other creators about the things that stopped them from starting and how they got over it and what they're doing now. And so that's going to be starting to record shortly. And it's called The Sam and Brody Show.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. Samantha, I really appreciate the insight. And as I say, I got so many people inboxing me, if that's a word, about today and that. So I hope other people have actually been able to watch this as well. Appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Thanks, Samantha. Bye.
Bye.